My name's Lachlan, this is Matilda and Emma from Marsh. Today we're presenting Coburg and Moreland Stations, which are part of the Belton Moreland level removal project, located in Brunswick and Coburg in the northern suburbs. The project involved the removal of 4 level crossings and the creation of 2 stations, Coburg being a premium station and Moreland being a local station, and part of the project was the restoration of the existing heritage train station buildings. This Coburg is the first train station to achieve a 6-star Green Star rating, and the project as a whole scored 98 out of 100 points for an infrastructure sustainability council rating system. The elevated rail provides 2.5 kilometres of elevated rail, providing about 2 MCG's worth of green space underneath. That provides cycling and pedestrian paths and cross-corridor connections, which were previously divided. The undercroft space, or the green space, is being used for landscaping. There's gyms, dog parks, playgrounds and other similar facilities. With both these buildings, we took an approach perhaps dissimilar to some other station projects with a canopy and disparate pods. Our approach here was to create a smaller footprint, singular building with a civic presence, and give that any space back to the public. There's subtle references to, particularly in Coburg, to the archway or the clocks at Flinders Street Station, and really quite identifiable and design.
So both buildings, the entries are located underneath the elevated rail. Their experience is pretty compressed, which helps to increase the sense of elevation once you enter the double height space of concourse. You can also see that upon entry you have heaps of natural light provided from these double height archways, which set as a backdrop to the stairs, helping draw you up to the platforms beyond. This also, as a side note, helps to contribute to our Green Star, as it reduces the energy requirements for the building. So the stairs are located on either side of the concourse, serving both platforms. They rise and split, allowing equal and efficient loading to both sides of the platforms. This also creates these dynamic double height spaces on either side of the building. It was a conscious decision to run the U-troughs through the buildings and to really express these. As you can see in this image, through a collaboration with the wider design team, we also worked to chamfer and refine these U-troughs so that they be both architectural elements as we're exposing them, but also for acoustics. In plan, Coburg is a premium station, so it's got a generous sized concourse with a fair amount of programme accommodated underneath. One of our biggest achievements was a reduction in footprint, which subsequently is a reduction in cost. As you can see, the programme inhabits the 4 corners of the building, and one of the other elements we worked with is by placing things like services underneath the stairs. It's also helping, that's a natural void space, helping to reduce footprint. We've also worked to use durable materials throughout these projects. A key point being durability, low maintenance. It's one of the first stations where we've started to use ceramic, which has been pretty successful. Patterning. So throughout the entire Belton Moreland project, we've used patterning in various ways. A key one here is on the Coburg facade, where you can see Woodmarsh really fought for a particularly deep concrete relief. We felt it was very important that shadowing it adds an extra level of patterning to the project. You can also see an over-exaggerated cornice, which is another sort of motif to more civic architecture. Elevated rail. So in between the 2 station buildings, you can see we've got 2.5 kilometres of public space created with a series of functions underneath. It was really about removing the barrier between these neighbourhoods and giving this space back to the public. You can see we've got playgrounds, dog parks and cycleways, which are highly used. On the right hand side of the page here, you can see the entry to Coburg. where we've got the violet screening. So colour was used prominently throughout the Belton Moreland project. The orange is really identifiable. It helps reference Coburg as an urban marker. The perforations on the screens are a bit of a nod to the historic register, and particularly in this area, the Upfield line was predominantly riveted metalwork, so I guess there's a repetition of that motif there. Finally, we worked with Tract, the landscape architect on this project. Water-sensitive urban design was a key point that added towards our sustainability credits and was critical to the success of the rail corridor. There's a significant amount of healthy native planting that's really grown up in the last year, and this is also helping to protect the neighbouring community from water runoff and flooding.
6 minutes.
So as part of the project, the existing station buildings were retained, renovated and restored. At Coburg Station, these spaces are now function rooms for the council, and at Moreland Station, these are public bathroom facilities for station users and for the public. As you can see in the foreground of this image, a section of old track has been maintained in the landscape, a remnant of what was there before. And the renovation and restoration of these buildings, which were previously quite derelict and poorly maintained, was really significant for the project, also from a sustainability point of view, and something to give back to the local community as part of the corridor. Moreland Station's a local station, so it's a much smaller footprint than Coburg Station. The key components of this are the 2 stairs on either side of the platform and lifts, as well as service rooms within the body of the built part of the architecture. The terracotta coloured base of the building references the immediate context of the heritage building, and the scale of this is increased on the facade. The colour theme mentioned earlier that's running throughout the Belton Moreland project is repeated at Moreland Station with lighting that runs along the length of the underside of the stair. This also generates identity for the corridor and also safety at night. The large stair on both sides of the track has a tensioned metal mesh screen on both sides of the stair, and that's kind of draped along the sides. This acts as a rain screen, it provides ventilation and allows for views across Gandolfo Gardens and toward Melbourne city skyline. These are some construction photos, and we thought this was important to mention because in terms of the construction methodology, the architecture really had to respond to the phasing of construction, in that half the building was constructed whilst the train continued to run underneath, and then the other half of the building was constructed, meaning that the line was closed for a shorter time period. And so the architect had to enable this in the structure of the building, and that some of the services were positioned on one side of the building to facilitate this. Just one more final line. To end the presentation, there was a lovely quote from the Saturday paper that was written by Amy Stead that we felt reflected the architectural outcome really well. It read, "A young couple are waiting for someone at the end of their street, which formerly stopped dead at the rail line and now opens to a lively pedestrian thoroughfare. Their friend they are waiting for arrives and said, 'This is way better, there's a kind of spot here.'" And we feel like that's a really nice sentiment